I was handling business, not babysitting ambulances. In 38 years on this bench, I thought I had seen every type of arrogance money could buy. I was wrong. What happened when Veronica Sterling walked into my courtroom didn't just shock me. It destroyed a billion-dollar empire and proved that some insults demand absolute justice. But to understand how one woman's moment of supreme arrogance brought down everything she'd built, you need to know exactly what she said that made me do something I'd never done before. Picture this, a Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court. A routine traffic violation, failure to yield to emergency vehicles. The defendant, Veronica Sterling, wife of tech billionaire Marcus Sterling, owner of Sterling Industries. What should have been a simple fine was about to become the most devastating courtroom confrontation ever recorded. Here's what nobody knew yet. Veronica Sterling wasn't just wealthy, she was dangerously powerful. Her family's influence reached into politics, media, and law enforcement across 3 states. She owned judges, bought senators, and destroyed anyone who challenged her authority. But she had never encountered anyone like me. The violation was egregious. Security footage showed Veronica's Bentley blocking an ambulance carrying a heart attack victim to Rhode Island Hospital. When paramedics honked and flashed lights requesting she move, Veronica refused and screamed at the EMTs to find another route. The ambulance was delayed 4 critical minutes. The victim, 62-year-old construction worker Michael Torres, suffered permanent heart damage because of those lost minutes. When Veronica Sterling entered my courtroom, everything about her screamed money and entitlement, the Hermes handbag, the diamond necklace catching the lights. But it wasn't the luxury that filled the room with tension. It was her attitude. She surveyed my courtroom like property she was considering purchasing, dismissed every person as beneath her notice. "Mrs. Sterling," I began, "you're charged with failure to yield to emergency vehicles, specifically blocking an ambulance in active emergency response. How do you plead?" Veronica's response immediately told me this case would be unlike anything I'd experienced. She didn't stand or address the court properly. Instead, she leaned back with the casual arrogance of someone who had never been told no. "Your Honor," she said with practiced condescension, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I wasn't blocking anything. I was conducting important business on my phone and didn't notice the commotion behind me. Surely we can resolve this quietly and efficiently." The word commotion hung in the air like a slap. She had just referred to a medical emergency, a man fighting for his life as commotion. But Veronica Sterling was just getting started. "Mrs. Sterling, the ambulance was transporting a heart attack victim. Their sirens and lights were clearly visible. According to testimony, you not only refused to move, but verbally confronted the paramedics. Do you recall this?" Veronica's fingers drummed against her handbag, as if my questions bored her. "Your Honor, I receive hundreds of important calls daily. My husband's empire spans 14 countries and employs 40,000 people. When I'm managing global market decisions, I can't drop everything because some government vehicle wants me to move." The silence was profound. Veronica Sterling had just declared her business calls more important than someone's life. Besides, she continued with imperial authority, "Let's address the real issue. I run a foundation that's donated $20 million to Rhode Island hospitals. My family's taxes fund half this city's emergency services. You're blaming me for publicly funded incompetence while ignoring that my generosity keeps these services operational." She walked closer to my bench, heels clicking like approaching gunshots. "Your Honor, I understand that in your position, you don't comprehend the complexities of managing real wealth and responsibility. You handle parking tickets and petty disputes. Some of us operate differently. When I'm managing hostile takeovers affecting thousands' jobs in global markets, I can't interrupt that for every siren." She paused, surveying my courtroom with obvious disdain before delivering the insult that would destroy her forever. "With respect, you've spent your career in this little courtroom handling small problems for small people. I've built a global empire. I think I understand priorities better than someone who's never created anything, never employed anyone, never been responsible for anything larger than municipal violations. The absolute stillness that followed was the kind that precedes an earthquake. Veronica Sterling had just declared my life's work meaningless, my service irrelevant, my dedication worthless. But she wasn't finished. In a display of arrogance so profound it would have been admirable if it weren't so destructive, she delivered the final blow. So yes, I blocked traffic for 4 minutes while conducting business that affects more lives than you'll see in your career. And no, I don't feel bad about it because some people matter more than others. Some work is more important and some of us are simply more valuable to society. The courtroom exploded in shocked silence. Veronica Sterling had just declared herself more valuable than a heart attack victim, superior to paramedics, above the justice system, and better than every person in my courtroom. I stood up slowly, deliberately, with the full authority of 38 years of judicial experience. When Judge Frank Caprio stands during a hearing, everyone understands something significant is happening. The warmth I'm known for had vanished, replaced by something infinitely more dangerous. Mrs. Sterling, in 38 years on this bench, I have never encountered such breathtaking disrespect for human life, such contempt for justice, and such profound moral bankruptcy as you've displayed. Veronica's confident smirk began to falter as the room's temperature changed. You've declared your business calls more important than someone's life. You've blamed paramedics for not working around your criminal obstruction. You've dismissed a heart attack victim's disability as not your problem, and you've had the arrogance to suggest your wealth makes you superior to justice itself. I walked around my bench, eliminating the formal distance between judge and defendant. Mrs. Sterling, you asked me to understand priorities. Let me share what I understand. Michael Torres has spent 30 years building the homes and businesses that house your empire. The paramedic you dismissed saved thousands of lives. The emergency services you claim to fund serve everyone equally. Justice doesn't have a price tag. But more importantly, Mrs. Sterling, every person in this courtroom, this city, whose life you affected with your actions, has the same inherent worth you claim only for yourself. The construction worker fighting for his life, he matters as much as you do. Every human being your empire touches, they all matter as much as you do. The transformation in Veronica's face was remarkable. Supreme confidence cracked, replaced by genuine worry. Mrs. Sterling, since you've made this about wealth and power, I researched your empire thoroughly. What I found is directly relevant to your punishment. Veronica's face went pale as she realized her case was becoming much more complicated. Sterling Industries has been the subject of 17 federal investigations in 5 years. Environmental violations, worker safety violations, tax avoidance schemes, and using political influence to avoid accountability for corporate misconduct. I continued reading from documents she clearly hadn't expected me to access. The Sterling Foundation has been flagged by the IRS for questionable charitable deductions, donations claimed for tax purposes that were never distributed. Your family has been claiming benefits for charitable giving while keeping the money. Veronica tried to speak, but I wasn't finished destroying her foundation of lies. Furthermore, your personal finances show shell companies and offshore accounts hiding assets from federal taxation. The emergency services you claim to fund, you've been evading the taxes that would support them. But most relevant, 3 separate complaints have been filed against you for similar violations involving emergency vehicles. Each time your lawyers made complaints disappear through political pressure, each time you learned wealth could buy immunity. I set down the file and looked directly at Veronica, who appeared to be having trouble breathing. Well, Mrs. Sterling, today that immunity ends. Today you learned that money doesn't matter, influence doesn't work, and justice applies equally to everyone. What I announced next became the most talked about judicial decision in Rhode Island history. Mrs. Sterling for failure to yield to emergency vehicles resulting in life-threatening delays, maximum fine of $5,000. For contempt of court and complete disregard for human life, additional $5,000. But that was just the beginning of Veronica Sterling's destruction. Furthermore, I'm directing court administration to forward complete transcripts to the IRS, SEC, and Department of Justice. Your admissions of prioritizing business over public safety, combined with your documented pattern of believing yourself above the law, warrant federal investigation. I'm also directing that transcript copies go to every major news organization in New England. The public has the right to know how someone with significant influence views their lives. But most importantly, I'm ordering immediate forensic audit of all Sterling Foundation charitable claims for 7 years. If it's determined your family claimed false charitable deductions while claiming superiority over other citizens, you'll face federal tax fraud charges. Veronica's face drained of all blood as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. Your total fine is $10,000 due immediately. License suspended. 6 months, 200 hours community service, working with emergency medical services. And Mrs. Sterling, if you ever appear in my courtroom again, I will hold you in criminal contempt and recommend maximum penalties. The gavel came down with finality, but Veronica Sterling's destruction was just beginning. Within hours, video of her meltdown went viral. Her statement that some people matter more than others became a worldwide symbol of elite arrogance. Headlines read, "Billionaire's wife values business calls over heart attack victim," and Sterling empire built on contempt for working people. The federal investigations I triggered were devastating. IRS auditors discovered the Sterling Foundation had claimed $40 million in charitable deductions for donations never made. Shell companies hiding assets unraveled, revealing decades of tax evasion. SEC investigation uncovered years of securities fraud, environmental cover-ups, and worker safety violations hidden through political corruption. Federal prosecutors found evidence of bribery, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to obstruct justice, reaching into government offices. Marcus Sterling's empire collapsed within 6 months. Federal seizures froze hundreds of millions in assets. Criminal indictments named both Marcus and Veronica as defendants. Their $2 billion fortune was reduced to nothing as legal fees, fines, and forfeitures consumed everything they'd built. Michael Torres, the heart attack victim whose life Veronica had dismissed, filed civil lawsuit against the Sterling family for permanent disability. The jury, including working-class citizens affected by Sterling Industries' environmental violations, awarded Torres $50 million. Veronica Sterling, who had declared herself superior to everyone, worked her community service alongside the same paramedics she dismissed as incompetent. The woman who claimed some people matter more than others spent 200 hours cleaning ambulances, restocking medical supplies, and learning about people who risked their lives to save strangers. The transformation was remarkable. By her final day of community service, Veronica had developed genuine respect for emergency workers. She learned their names, background, stories. She discovered many held college degrees where former military veterans had chosen careers dedicated to serving others despite low pay and dangerous conditions. On her final day, Veronica approached me privately. The arrogant billionaire's wife, who had declared herself superior, had been replaced by a humbled woman who understood the meaning of service. "Judge Capriato," she said quietly, "I want to thank you for what you did to me. I was a monster. I convinced myself that money made me better than others, that wealth granted immunity from basic decency. You saved me from myself by showing me how ugly I'd become. Michael Torres and I became friends during my service. I learned about his family, his work, his dreams for his grandchildren. He forgave me, though I didn't deserve it. He taught me that a person's worth has nothing to do with their bank account and everything to do with how they treat others." Veronica Sterling served 18 months in federal prison for tax fraud and conspiracy. When released, she used remaining family assets to create a legitimate charitable foundation, supporting emergency medical services and helping working families afford emergency care. The Sterling empire, built on arrogance and maintained through corruption, was gone forever. But Veronica built something more valuable, a life dedicated to serving others, making amends for past cruelty, and ensuring no family would struggle to afford emergency care because someone decided business calls were more important than human life. Years later, when people ask me about my most satisfying case, I tell them about Veronica Sterling. Not because I enjoyed destroying a billionaire's empire, but because I witnessed the transformation of a human being who had lost her way and found purpose through accountability, service, and genuine understanding of what it means to treat every person with dignity. Justice isn't just punishment. It's ensuring actions have consequences, that accountability leads to growth, and that even the most powerful must answer for choices that harm others. Veronica Sterling learned that lesson completely. In learning it, she became proof that wealth without compassion is worthless, that power without responsibility is dangerous, and that true worth comes not from what you can buy, but how you treat people who can't fight back. That's the legacy of real justice. That's why courtrooms exist. And that's why every person, regardless of wealth, must answer for their actions when they harm others. Because we all matter equally, and justice